What's going on, you lactose intolerant Ladybug? When rotation comes to Pokemon TCG Live on Thursday, March 21st, it will bring about a new era, removing all E-Block cards from the format. This means our new standard format will only allow cards from Brilliant Stars up to Temporal Forces, or cards with an F, G, or H in the bottom left. While our first major tournament won't take place until April 5th, we already know which decks will be the best thanks to Japanese tournament results. Now, you might be thinking that I've already made a video like this, and you're right. But this time around, I'm putting lists in the comments so you can copy and paste them into live. Also, the Temporal Forces cards have been available in Japan for about 45 days now, meaning it's much clearer what's the best and what's not. But yeah, Charizard's still the best. While Lugia VStar may have won the first major Temporal Forces tournament in Japan, the best deck overall is Charizard EX, and will probably be Charizard EX for quite some time. While I highlighted the Bibarel build first last time, the Pidgeot version has seen a resurgence lately, so we'll start there. Since the core of every deck I'm talking about today is already available, I won't go over the complete strategy for them. I mean, it's Charizard EX. It's a stage 2 that accelerates 3 energy into play and does anywhere from 180 to 330 damage based on the number of prize cards your opponent has taken. No, instead, I'll just talk about how they evolve in the new meta beginning on Thursday. First up, what are the benefits of the Pidgeot EX build? Well, its ability just goes and gets you whatever card you want every single turn and doesn't have to worry about Path to the Peak anymore. Need boss's orders for a KO? Use Pidgeot. Need maximum belt to deal extra damage? Use Pidgeot. Need a rare candy to evolve into Charizard? Use Pidgeot. It's insanely powerful, and what's even better is that the Pidgey can just put 2 basic Pokemon on your bench. So if your first turn going second is horrible, just use Call for Family and you should be okay. And finally, Pidgeot EX is a much better attacker than Bibarel, dealing 120 damage while also having free retreat. But there are downsides. For starters, this build relies heavily on rare candy, making it susceptible to TM de-evolution. And it's also a 280 hit point 2-prizer with a lightning weakness, making it an easy target for Iron Hands and Giratina VStar. For the Pidgeot version of Charizard I'm showing you right now, you have your typical bench protectors in Manaphy and Jirachi. There's also 2 copies of Rotom V because you want to end your first turn using its ability, which draws you 3 cards. Buddy Poffin, Nest Ball, and Ultra Ball help get your basics into play early, and then it's a simple case of evolving into Pidgeot EX and Charizard EX, then rolling through the rest of the game. There's 5 Gust cards in total, 2 bosses, and 3 Countercatcher to make picking your targets easy. Radiant Charizard offers up a single prize attacker that can do 250 damage for as little as 1 energy. And Choice Belt and Maximum Belt help fix a lot of math, as Charizard EX is a fairly weak attacker at the beginning of the game. This version does have some extra bells and whistles. Airy can help in the mirror match, discarding rare candies. Professor Turo and Collapse Stadium get rid of a Rotom V that would otherwise be a liability. And Mist Energy prevents your opponent from using Frenzied Gouging or Star Requiem against your Charizard. Other lists I saw included Fluttermane and Delphox V as backup attackers. Fluttermane not only shuts off your opponent's active Pokemon's ability, but it also does 90 damage and spreads 2 damage counters, which could be huge in helping fix some math. Delphox V, meanwhile, deals 120 to the active and 120 to a bench Pokemon, though you do have to send 2 energy to the Lost Zone. Vitality Band allows Charizard to reach 190 damage, KOing your Rotom V. Or if they've taken a single prize card, it allows you to KO an Arceus V or Giratina V. And Hero's Cape as your A-Spec instead of Maximum Belt allows Charizard to survive a potential one-shot against an Iron Leaves EX. Switching over to the Bibarel build of Charizard, the strategy is slightly different. Now, because of TM evolution and the lack of Rotom V, going second is the optimal play against most decks. On that turn 1 going second, you play Arven, get a Buddy Poffin, and TM evolution. Grab a Charmander and Bidoof off of the Poffin, then try to evolve them by attaching an energy to your active and using the Technical Machine. Now, I poured over a lot of Japanese lists, and it's clear they don't play these on PTCGL because they only run a single copy of TM Evolution. My personal recommendation is 2 copies of it, as well as a copy of Energy Search or Earthen Vessel to find your energy, but that's just me. The pros of the Bibarel build are that it relies less on rare candy. You still play 3, but evolving into at least 1 Charmeleon along the way is almost a given. You also don't have any 2-prize liabilities. They either have to pick off single prizers or go through your Charizard. And if you're worried about the lack of getting whatever card you want each turn, there's Cypher Maniac's code breaking. Play it, stack any 2 cards on top of your deck, then draw into them with Bibarel. The negatives with the Bibarel build is the Bibarel itself. Stall and Mill decks can't wait until you have one on the field so they can catcher it up and have their way with your Beaver. But in most other matchups, Bibarel is going to be your best befriend. Other options for Bibarel include going for a full 3-3 line instead of a 3-2, swapping out the Prime Catcher for Maximum Belt, and adding a copy of Mist Energy for Frenzied Gouging and Star Requiem. Basically, there's two ways to play Charizard EX and both are super powerful. But how about a third way to play it? Because Charizard is so versatile, you can chuck a 2-2 line of Arceus VStar in there. If you find the other two builds to be a little inconsistent early, Arceus VStar offers up a turn 2 ability that gets you any 2 cards you want. Plus, it adds an attacker who isn't weak to grass that can deal 200 damage for 3 energy. Here's a first place list from Japan that plays Arceus, Charizard, and Pidgeot. Yes, ACP lives. It's basically just Charizard Pidgeot with a 2-2 Arceus jammed in there. So if you do find yourself having lackluster turn 2s with the other build, try this one. Same goes for the Bibarel variant. Modify the list somewhat, chuck in a 2-2 Arceus, and now your second turn becomes that much more better. But if you think this is the end of Arceus' usefulness post-rotation, think again. With the loss of Path to the Pizza rotation, Arceus VStar no longer has to worry about whiffing a turn 2 Starbirth. So you can deal 180 damage on turn 2 with Arceus, accelerate 3 energy to a Giratina V-Star, then deal 280 damage on turn 3. Oh, I'm sorry, what's that? 280 isn't enough to one-shot an EX? Cool, attach Maximum Belt and now it's 330. And with the addition of Iron Leaves EX, one-shotting 2 Charizard EX becomes easier than subscribing to me. Seriously, you literally just tap a button. There are several different ways to play Arceus Giratina, but to start, here's the 7th place list from the biggest Temporal Forces tournament in Japan. It's super straightforward. There's a 4-4 Arceus, 2-2 Giratina, 2-2 Bibarel, Iron Leaves EX, and a copy of Professor Turo in case you start Iron Leaves. Since Charizard is going to be the most played deck post-rotation, let me talk a bit about the strategy. While it may seem easy for Arceus Giratina to beat Zard, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. If you're going first, the strategy is the same as it's always been with an Arceus deck. At the minimum, attach an energy to an Arceus V, doesn't matter which one. If you're going second though, you want to get a double turbo energy on Arceus V and accelerate 3 energy into play. Then things get a bit complicated. Because Charizard EX does more damage based on the number of prize cards you've taken, there's a big decision ahead of you. Very likely you'll be in a position on turn 2 to take a knockout of a single prizer like Charmander or Charmeleon. But doing so could cost you the game. As soon as you take a prize, Charizard's damage jumps to 210. If they attach a Vitality Band or Choice Belt, now they can one-shot an Arceus V or Giratina V and just take 2 more knockouts for game, while you still need 3 knockouts. So it might be better to go for a Rotom V or simply accelerate more energy with an Arceus V. Once you strategize your way past those opening couple of turns though and take your first 2 prizes, it should steamroll Charizard. Depending on how your board is set up, you either slap an Iron Leaves down, move it into the active and take a one-shot KO, or put a Giratina V-Star in the active, attach that Maximum Belt, and deal 330 damage. Just remember that Giratina sends 2 energy to the Lost Zone, so getting as much energy on the field early is super important. As I mentioned, there's several cards to put in Arceus Giratina to improve your various matchups. That first list has Airy to discard rare candy from their hand, and Grabber to remove a Pokemon from their hand, making it more difficult to evolve into a Stage 2. In that same vein, I've seen other successful lists run TMD Evolution, allowing you to really screw over rare candy reliant decks. For the mirror match, there's Radiant Gardevoir, which stops an opponent's Giratina V-Star from one-shotting your V-Stars, and good old Lumineon V to help you find whatever supporter you want whenever you want. It's going to be so freeing not worrying about Path to the Peak anymore, like when you realize socks aren't mandatory. Elsewhere, don't forget that Spiritomb exists, shutting off the abilities of every Rotom V and Lumineon V. And even though we're shifting towards an EX-heavy meta, Choice Belt isn't a terrible idea, allowing Arceus V-Star to one-shot that smug Rotom V. However you decide to play Arceus Giratina post-rotation, it's going to be the V-deck with the biggest impact over the next year. When Lugia VStar disappeared from the top tiers, who would have thought that a tiny little chinchilla would be what brought it back? The winner of that first major Japanese tournament, Lugia VStar adds a 3-3 line of Cinccino from Temporal Forces, as well as 3 copies of Mist Energy and a Master Ball. Let's talk about those new cards for a second. Cinccino is a single prizer that does 70 damage for each special energy a card attached to it. Attach 5 special energy, it's dealing 350 damage and one-shotting basically every Pokemon in the game. The deck has a total of 17 energy, so that shouldn't be a problem. And thanks to Mist Energy, which prevents all effects of attacks done to the Pokemon it's attached to, you can stop things like Roaring Moon EX's Frenzied Gouging, Giratina VStar Star Requiem, and Sableye Lost Mine. As for Master Ball, it just goes and gets any Pokemon from your deck, huge for something like Lugia. That's because the strategy is all about getting Archeops in your discard pile. For the first 2 turns of the game, that's literally all you're trying to do. Jack off with Jacques, play with your balls, hope to flip heads on capturing Aroma. Whatever you gotta do, get 2 Archeops in the discard pile by turn 2. Then use Lugia VStar Summoning Star to put those Archeops directly onto your bench, thus allowing you to accelerate up to 4 special energy from your deck every turn. Once you have those Archeops up and running, the strategy shifts to hitting hard. If you can, use Collapse Stadium to bump any 2 prize Pokemon on your bench, leaving only single prizers. Then attach energy to Cinccino to do up to 350 damage. Or if you're low on energy, attach 3 to Snorlax and do up to 180 damage. At that point, you'll either win or lose and not much thinking is involved. As for the coin flip, Lugia definitely prefers going first. All you have to do is put a Lugia V down turn 1 and you have a chance to win. But if you go second, all hope is not lost. That's because the existing Minccino has a Call for Family attack, putting 2 basics on your bench. So while going first is optimal, you can still have a decent turn 1 going second. I've looked at several different winning Lugia lists in Japan, and there isn't much room for whacking off. You could add a Noivern EX to give yourself a better matchup against the basic heavy decks like Roaring Moon and Iron Hand's Future Box. All you have to do is attach a Double Turbo and a Mist Energy to Noivern, now it's immune to damage from basics and effects of attacks. Or you can put in a couple of Luminous Energy and a Radiant Charizard to give yourself a 250 damage attacker at the end of the game for a single energy. Or swap out Master Ball for Maximum Belt, and now Cinccino can deal 330 damage for 4 special energy attached to one-shotting a Charizard EX. It pains me to do this, but yes, Snorlax Stall is one of the best decks post-rotation. If you thought losing all those E-Block cards would destroy it, the opposite happened. It only became more awesome. Yes, Echoing Horn is gone, but the Pokemon Company prepared for this and gave us the Born Ashore Mantine and Astral Radiance. How nice of them. Before I talk about Snorlax, I'm going to say one thing. Do not play this on the ranked or casual ladder on PTCGL. No one wants to face Snorlax Stall. It's boring, and even if we beat it, the whole game takes like 20 to 30 minutes and we have to wait forever for you to take your turn. Yes, it's a valid strategy, but save it for friend battles and limitless tournaments. Don't force the rest of us to suffer. Unless you're making a YouTube video, then it's okay. The whole strategy with Snorlax Stall is to stop your opponent from playing the game. Snorlax's ability, Block, prevents your opponent from retreating their active Pokemon. So all you have to do is countercatcher up a Comfey or a Bibarel or a Rotom V or anyone else who doesn't pose a threat. Once you've done that, it becomes a race to discard all of their Switch cards. Since Escape Rope rotates, that basically just leaves 4 copies of Switch, 4 Switch Cart, which only works on basics, and Prime Catcher, which they can only have 1 copy of. You achieve this with a combination of the new Airy, which discards up to 2 item cards from their hand, and Misfortune Sisters, which looks at the top 5 cards of their deck and discards any items there. If you've never faced Snorlax before, yes, games are as boring and frustrating and annoying as they sound. But what if your opponent knows what they're doing and only puts Pokemon into play that can attack? Well, fear not, there's ways around that. First is Erica's Invitation. If they've built up a big hand or you feel a tingling in your Pokeballs, play it. If they have a basic Pokemon in their hand, not only does it get put into play, but it also goes into the active spot. Alternatively, there's Mantine. For a single energy, it puts any basic Pokemon from their discard pile onto their bench. Obviously, it's not as good as Echoing Horn, but it can still just win you the game and there's not much your opponent can do to stop you. Because talking about Snorlax makes me sadder than a Sobble, I'll quickly mention that Chi-Yu EX exists in the deck to discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck to further annoy them. Mimikyu is immune to damage from V and EX, so if they don't have anybody else, just put that into play and you win. And Pidgeot V is how you keep from decking out, able to recycle itself into your deck every single turn. So yes, Snorlax strong, but you know play on ladder, okay? Deal? Deal. This is why you let the meta evolve. Early on, Lost Zone decks in Japan were barely played, but as time went on, they've seen a huge resurgence absolutely taking over the tournament scene in recent weeks. Both the Lost Box and Giratina VStar builds are seeing a ton of success, but we'll kick things off with the Lost Box archetype. Pre-rotation, Lost Box ran Roaring Moon EX, Iron Hands EX, and Raikou V. Post-rotation, Lost Box runs Roaring Moon EX, Iron Hands EX, and Raikou V. Yeah, if you hate playing against Lost Zone decks right now, well, they're just as good starting on Thursday. The strategy remains the same as always. Get as many cards in the Lost Zone as quickly as possible using Comfey, Colress, and Lost Vacuum. While it's a little tougher to get out with the loss of Battle VIP Pass, Cramorant should still be your turn 1 attacker, dealing 110 damage for free provided there's 4 cards in your Lost Zone. Then, get 7 cards in the Lost Zone, use Mirage Gate to power up whatever attacker is best for the situation, and start winning. Looking at those attackers, there's good old Radiant Greninja to punish anyone who couldn't put down a Manaphy, Raikou V to deal 220 damage if both benches are full, and to easily one-shot Pidgeot EX and Lugia VStar and Palkia VStar through weakness, Roaring Moon EX to deal 220 damage if there's a Stadium in play, or to just one-hit KO anybody, Iron Hands EX to take an extra prize card against low HP Pokemon, Mew EX to copy and attack like Charizard's Burning Darkness to deal 330 damage if they have 1 prize card remaining, and Sableye to spread 12 damage counters once you have 10 cards in the Lost Zone. There's a ton of versatility, and so long as you don't get screwed over when using Flower Selecting or Colress, you'll have a good matchup against pretty much every deck, even Snorlax, because you play 7 Switch cards. There isn't much to change with Lost Box. Since you have Counter Catcher and Prime Catcher, Boss's Orders isn't necessarily necessary. TM Crisis Punch is fun to have as a way for Cramorant to deal 280 damage for free if your opponent has 1 prize card left, but it means holding on to it the entire game. And you could use somebody like Hoopa EX to give yourself a fighting type attacker, but aside from a few minor changes like including Manaphy or Jirachi, the optimal list is locked. Another deck that doesn't really change post-rotation, Lost Giratina VStar is as powerful as ever. And one of the reasons why is Digimon Virizion. I know I already talked about it, but it gives you an easy way to one-shot Charizard EX. In the Arceus deck though, you could only attack with Iron Leaves by putting it down from hand, then activating its ability to move energy to it. Here, you can start Iron Leaves and it's not a big deal. Obviously, the surprise factor is gone, but you can just use Mirage Gate to attach to it, thus ruining Charizard's day. There's only 4 new cards in the deck. Iron Leaves, 2 copies of Buddy Buddy Poffin to get your Comfey, since the Poffin can't get anybody over 70 hit points, Comfey is your only target. Prime Catcher, because Giratina needs to choose who it attacks since Lost Impact sends energy to the Lost Zone, and 1 rescue board to retreat Comfey and build up your Lost Zone with Lost Vacuum. One key difference with the post-rotation version of Giratina is the lack of a stadium. It used to run Path to the Peak, now it's got nothing. You could include a copy of Artisan to help get out your single prizers, but that's about it. Otherwise, just be a Lost Box deck. Use Comfey, Colress, and Lost Vacuum to build up the Lost Zone, Cramorant to attack turn 1, Giratina to attack after that by using Mirage Gate, and cleaning up any knockouts at the end with Sableye. Easy peasy. And for the final deck that is consistently winning tournaments in Japan, we have Chien-Pao EX. So how do you make the existing Chien-Pao deck ready for post-rotation play? Remove Battle VIP Pass, add in Buddy Buddy Poffin, and, well, that's about it. Prime Catcher and Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking also make their way into the deck, but it just goes to show you how little of an impact this rotation has had on the top decks. The main way to play Chien-Pao in the Temporal Forces format is with, obviously, Baxcalibur and Bibarel. Baxcalibur accelerates energy, Bibarel keeps drawing you cards every turn. Radiant Greninja is also there to snipe the bench, while also being able to draw you 2 cards by discarding energy from hand. There's also a single copy of Iron Hands EX and a single Lightning Energy, allowing you to take 2 prizes on any low HP Pokemon. The list I'm showing you right now does play a 1/1 Palkia V-Star to help accelerate energy from the discard pile on turn 2 if you whiff a Baxcalibur, but you can always cut it if you just want to focus on Chien-Pao. Alright, so going first isn't a bad idea. There's 4 copies of Buddy Buddy Poffin, 3 Frigibax, and 3 Bidoof, meaning your chances of naturally getting several basics down turn 1 are high. This way, you can use Irida turn 2 to go and get yourself a rare candy in Baxcalibur and start swinging hard. And if you go second, use Irida to get a Buddy Buddy Poffin and something like Palkia V or Chien-Pao, depending on what the rest of your hand looks like. The pros of Chien-Pao are the same as they are right now. Getting 6 energy into play and dealing 360 damage isn't tough, and reusing that energy is easy thanks to superior energy retrieval. The cons of Chien-Pao are also the same as they are right now. It relies heavily on Baxcalibur to deal that damage, so if you can't get one up and running, or if your opponent knocks it out or uses de-evolution at the right time, you're kinda screwed. You can always mess around with the counts of certain cards or add an Arc to Bax, but the only real meaningful changes come in the form of Kyogre from Crown Zenith, which does 180 damage for 4 energy and preserves 3 of them, and Iron Bundle to either force your opponent to switch out their active or to deal 80 damage and stop an evolution Pokemon from attacking the following turn. Or you can splup all over the place and play Ditto, your call. There are a few other really good decks post-rotation that I didn't highlight. Arceus Vulpix is something to watch out for, as Vulpix blocks damage from Pokemon with an ability. And Golden Go EX is always a threat, able to deal a bunch of damage fairly easily while also drawing several cards each turn thanks to its ability. Regardless of which deck you choose to play, the benefit of the post-rotation meta is that most of your cards that are good now stay good. That's also a negative because it means Snorlax is always there ready to block your path.